A very good morning to you and welcome to Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. Today on the show, we shall be taking a look at what's making headlines locally, what has transpired over the weekend with the political dynamics that keep changing, and of course, the very latest on the international front. Let's start off with what's making headlines on the international front, and we're starting off with the Daily Monitor. As you can see there, anger as Cabinet okays bail reform. Those against the move warn that the same draconian laws will later be used against the architects. Find out what that is all about, and also they're giving us a tally of the coronavirus infections in the region. We have Kenya at 251,057 people who have been reported infected by the coronavirus. Last on that list is Tanzania. Of course, they are late to the party, but of course they are at 25,957. Also, MPs probe CAA's 10 billion shilling airport deal, inflated costs. Kisoro starts search for new bishop, and of course, International Affairs Ministry sets up one-stop e-service portal. Government starts building 5 border health units. Find out more about what's happening locally in Uganda by taking a look at the Daily Monitor. They have so much that is going on the local front. Moving on, let's take a look at what's making headlines in Tanzania, and we have for you right there, the Citizen is told tackling the ever-changing faces of prostitution in Tanzania. Now, prostitution is one of the oldest trades, and of course in the world. Several forms it has taken several forms, and of course it remains illegal in Tanzania, and they are trying to figure out how they can tackle it, as even the internet plays a part in that particular trade. And pictured there are ladies of the night. Also, how postcodes will unlock online trade growth, and Dumbaro clarifies how the ministry will use 90.2 billion shillings of IMF cash. Find out more about what's happening locally in Tanzania by taking a look at this particular website. It has so much, and of course also giving us a tally of the infections of the coronavirus in the region. Next, we have for you the Rwanda Today, giving us the very latest in Rwanda. We're told South Africa to start jobs for kids as young as 12. Under South African law, children aged 12 and up can give their own consent for medical treatment, and this includes being vaccinated against the coronavirus. Also, limited capacity, strict rules weigh down meat export. According to government figures, meat exports have dropped to over 86% in the past 2 years, and of course they're trying to take a look at what's wrong and what's affecting that. Also, thousands attend Zuma prayer event. Supporters pray for ex-President Jacob Zuma and welcome his release on medical parole. Now, let's move on, of course, to some other stories here on the Rwanda Today. Rwanda introduces vaccine mandate, and dry spell blamed for shortage of milk as demand increases. Find out more about what's happening in Rwanda and other parts of Africa by taking a look at Rwanda Today. Next, we have the CNN website. Ex-Intel official behind Trump-Russia dossier speaks out. Now, the former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele defended the controversial dossier that claimed Russian officials had compromising information on Trump. Also, an opinion piece telling us Trump can't always get what he wants, and here's why Republicans are afraid to criticize Trump. A bit of Trump news right there. We also have another article here that tells us one of Trump's top targets has outraised her opponent. Find out how. Now, also, we are told a man is on the run after allegedly killing 2 neighbors. Some in China hope he will never be caught. And also, China's economy grew 4.9% in its third quarter. China's record factory inflation poses another threat to its supply chain. They're also still focusing on Beijing, or rather on China. Protest in Athens as Beijing prepares for Olympic flame. Down here, we're told winners of Prince William's £1 million Earthshot Prize have been announced, and when your home becomes a tourist attraction. Find out what's happening. This, I do believe, is happening in Europe, and there's so much more making headlines on the CNN. They're telling us what's happening in America and the rest of the world. Of course, get on that website if you want to know more about what's happening. But locally, let's take a look at what's making headlines. And as you have seen earlier on our screens, politics is taking center stage, and it's one of our top stories today on the Standard. But here is a story still on the same. ODM leader Raila Odinga says he will push for the issuance of land to descendants of landless Mau Mau fighters if he takes charge next year. Raila, who paid a visit to Mama Mukami Kimathi, the widow of freedom fighter Dedan Kimathi, said it was unfortunate that some of the freedom fighters and their descendants are landless. Elsewhere, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, continued to drum up support for his presidency as the clock ticks towards the 2022 general election. Emmanuel Tom with that story.
With only 2 days left before the Mashujaa Day celebrations, ODM leader Raila Odinga spent his Sunday afternoon in Komaroke State, Nairobi, paying a courtesy call to Mukami Kimathi, who is the widow of the late freedom fighter Dedan Kimathi. During the visit, Raila said he would push for the rights of the Mau Mau freedom fighters who paid the ultimate price to have the country liberated from the British colonizers.
It's a property that they have identified in Laikipia, and they've already raised 60 million shillings, and that they need to be supported to be able to buy that land. I'm going to ask the government to do so, but I've also said that if they don't do it, my government will do it.
Raila also called for unity through his Azimio la Umoja mantra as the country heads towards the 2022 general election.
I came up with Azimio la Umoja to unite all the peoples of our country, irrespective of their ethnic backgrounds.
During the event, the ODM leader Raila Odinga received blessings to run for the top office in the land from the 90-year-old freedom fighter. Mukami Kimathi is remembered for her immense contribution in helping her husband Dedan Kimathi Washuri, who was the senior military and spiritual leader of the Mau Mau uprising, to forge a formidable armed military struggle against the British colonial regime in Kenya in the 1950s until his execution in 1957. This comes as fresh wars between the Interior PS Dr. Karanja Kibicho and Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru erupted again regarding the list of invited guests to the Mashujaa Day celebrations slated for the 20th this month at Wangoro Stadium in Kirinyaga County.
Hii ingine ya kusema sijui kadi hatujapeana, ya uhakika ni ya kwamba tumepeana kwa county government karibu kadi 300. Hii sherehe ni ya watu wa Kirinyaga, si ya county government.
The two had weeks ago publicly buried the hatchet, pledging to work together towards the unity of the people of Kirinyaga. As that was happening, several kilometers away, the National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi also drummed up support for his candidature as he eyes the presidency in 2022.
Watu wengine wanasema huko sasa, nimeambiwa na watu wengine, enda ukaongee na ati kuwa na mlengo hii, enda ukasupport nani na support nini.
Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, now still in politics, Deputy President William Ruto is exuding confidence of winning next year's general election. Ruto, who spoke during several stopovers in Mombasa during his fourth-day coastal region tour, once again reiterated that a special fund will be introduced in each constituency to aid small-scale traders. Tobias Chanji with that story.
Today, Deputy President William Ruto chose to have stopover rallies at Jomvu, Changamwe and Likoni, where ODM party county luminaries had visited a day before. In his speech, Ruto exuded confidence that he will win next year's general election despite concerted efforts from his competitors.
Kuna kazi kubwa imesalia, na hiyo kazi kubwa iliyosalia, mimi nataka niwaulize kwa unyenyekevu ya kwamba mwaka ujao tuunde serikali ambayo itatusaidia kukamilisha kazi tuliyoianzisha. Watu wa Jomvu na Mombasa tutaungana pamoja.
Terming ODM leader Raila Odinga's 6,000 shillings monthly stipend to the jobless as handouts, Ruto said his government will establish a special fund of 120 million shillings per constituency to aid small-scale traders.
Tunasema hivi, kwa mapenzi ya Mungu mwaka ujao tunaweka pesa ya serikali na mpango wa mikopo ya serikali ambayo itamsaidia mama mboga apate pesa ya kufanya biashara, imsaidie bodaboda apate pesa ya kufanya biashara, wale wa micro na small enterprises pesa ya kuinua biashara zao.
At Jomvu, Ruto took time to explain to the public some of the projects that Jubilee government had initiated in the region.
Barabara yenu ya kutoka kule Mombasa town karibu na Marikiti, hiyo inaitwa Magongo Road. Tumejenga, sasa tunafanya inakuwa dual carriageway mpaka kwa Jomvu. Alafu kutoka kwa Jomvu tunaweka dual carriageway mpaka Mariakani. Tumeweka hapo karibu shilingi bilioni 20 ya kupanua hiyo barabara kwa manufaa ya maendeleo ya Mombasa County.
On Monday, the DP will meet about 700 aspirants for various positions in the entire coast region at Wild Waters before winding his tour on Tuesday in Lamu.
Sisi tunataka kuleta serikali ambayo itaheshimu kila Mkenya. Kazi ni kazi, awe ni mama mboga, awe ni mtu wa bodaboda, awe ni maskini, awe ni tajiri. Chini ya katiba ya Kenya, chini ya Hustler Nation, tutahakikisha kila mtu amepatiwa fursa kujihami kimaisha.
Tobias Chanji, KTN News, Mombasa County.
Now, still on politics, and Wamani National Congress leader Musalia Mudavadi is asking President Uhuru Kenyatta to lift the current curfew in order to open the economy. Mudavadi says the curfew that was slapped to contain the COVID-19 was hurting Kenyans. He was speaking during the burial ceremony of renowned lawyer Evans Monari at Nyakongo Secondary School in Nyamira County. Speakers during the burial ceremony urged their colleagues to stop their silence on the international rule of law that gave Somalia a major control of the resource-rich waters along the Indian Ocean.
President. It was the final journey of lawyer Evans Monari. Monari was part of President Uhuru Kenyatta's legal team at the International Criminal Court, ICC, and the tribute spoke volumes about his accomplishments in law.
Evans alikuwa ndugu yangu mdogo. Alipoingia chuo kusoma sheria, alitupata huko na Mohamed Nyaoga na wenzetu, na tukasoma na yeye kwa kipindi na tukawa marafiki mno. Akawa anaheshimika sana na kupendwa sana.
I want to urge all Kenyans, both here and elsewhere, that the best tribute we can give to this fallen hero is to embrace peace as we go to the elections of next year. That we should not allow political contests to divide our country, to cause divisions and conflicts among our people.
However, for a section of leaders here led by Kisii Senator Sam Ongeri, the judgment on Tuesday last week by the International Court of Justice should not go unchallenged.
We cannot allow an inch of our land to be taken away by anybody. And I would appreciate if Kenyans can in one cause support the president on this matter of our maritime boundaries because he's protecting it on our behalf. And I'm sure if Monari was alive today, he would have been at the forefront defending the maritime boundary of Kenya.
Wakenya lazima mjue kuwa lazima tulinde nchi yetu. We must support President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
And Amani National Congress leader Musalia Mudavadi, who attended the ceremony, called upon President Uhuru Kenyatta to consider lifting the nationwide curfew. He said Kenyans are straining to make ends meet and they are ready to observe the Ministry of Health guidelines on COVID-19 even without the curfew.
Kile naomba tu kupitia kwa Fred Matiang'i akipata nafasi amshawishi Rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kwamba tuzidi kuzingatia COVID rules, lakini curfew tu, curfew.
Mudavadi also called for peace ahead of the 2022 general election, saying it is time for leaders to rally for peace. Kevin Ogutu, KTN News.
All right, and those and many other stories are making headlines this morning. On the front page of the Standard, you're told Ruto, front runner or a 2022 pacesetter. For at least 3 years, the DP has been on the campaign trail, giving him a clear advantage. But as other aspirants emerge and sell their candidature, will he be able to maintain his pace to the finish line? That is a good question right there. Also, Mama's blessing, as we heard on our Story 1, ODM leader receiving blessings from Mukami Kimathi, the widow of freedom fighter Dedan Kimathi in Komarok, Nairobi yesterday. And this is a story that, of course, that picture of that blessing being given to Raila Odinga is on the front page of the Standard this morning. The Daily Nation is going with politics still. Uhuru Raila plot NARC-like coalition. Faced with a formidable challenge from the Deputy President William Ruto, United Democratic Alliance strategists for President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga have drawn inspiration from the victorious pre-election pact of 2002 and crafted 3 options for nominations to secure a majority seat at all levels. So very contrasting headlines here. On one end, the Deputy President seems like a threat. On the other, the question is being asked whether he's just going to be a pacesetter or maintain his pace since he took to the races earlier. Now, joining me to discuss this is Sasha Wamae, Chair Lady of Young Women in Kenya, to joining us via Zoom. We also have Professor Alfred Omenya here with us in studio, a governance expert. Also, we have Alex Manyasi, a public policy analyst, who's joining us at our I&M studio. Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. All right, now let's start off with a story on the blessing that was given to Raila Odinga, and it's on the front page of the Standard this morning. She's pretty aged, but of course a very symbolic figure to central Kenya, and of course bringing all the history that her late husband brings on. It's very significant that she would put her hand on Raila Odinga's head. What swing do you think this brings, Professor, to Raila's prospects in 2022?
Thank you, Trix. Yeah, I think that was an interesting visit, of course, but I also think that is a relatively honest visit. It's honest? In this sense that Raila has always had a relationship with the widow of Kimathi. You remember even previously, of course, most of the visits happened during political campaigns. But in the last campaign, he did visit. He promised to build for a home, and of course, instructed during that time. Even earlier on, there was the issue of the role of Mau Mau. And Raila can, of course, claim, since he was part of the government, that supported the appeal to the British government. But I think largely it's just for optics. And I think this one is good. This is good optics because this is a part of the history of this country that we're very proud of. We also have a history of looters that he also visited recently within the central region. But I think for now, I mean, it doesn't hurt his. It doesn't hurt his. It does no harm, and could even get him a little bit of brownie points.
Yes.
But very, very good optics.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Speaking of brownie points, do you think it would even get him more brownie points, the promise that the descendants of Mau Mau veterans will get land?
Yes, and I actually wonder why it has not been done, really, because in principle, I think that's what government was saying. Yes, of course, I mean, the British promised to build the monument, and they did.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think the government of Kenya needs to really, do something. Up. Yeah, because whatever the case, I mean, the fight of the Mau Mau, their role in Kenya's independence is not very controversial. It's known what actually happened, and of course, we're fighting over land. So it's quite ironic
that they would miss out on land when actually Kenya gets independence.
Correct.
Alex Manyasi is joining us via live from I&M. Alex Manyasi, very interesting front page here, Mama's blessing, and you can see there Raila on his knees receiving that blessing, and there was the promise that Mau Mau, descendants of Mau Mau fighters would get land. I think this is a positive promise that would actually earn him brownie points, as Prof puts it. Do you think this is a plus? And of course, does it bring it back in terms of politics, bring his image back in terms of politics when it comes to him being the fighter for the rights of people and for democracy and the good of the nation?
Thank you, Trix. What I want to say is that, first of all, good morning to all our viewers. Raila Odinga represents the second liberation, so to speak. He represents the gap between the freedom fighters and the current generation, which is probably represented by William Ruto. I say that because Raila Odinga is one of those people then who technically picked up the mantle from after the liberation of this country from the white settlers. And then we have another category of another leader on the other side who are not part of that struggle. Why I say that? Because if you look at this blessing, it's in many ways figurative in the sense that if you look at, it's supposed to bring back the memories, of course, especially of the people from central Kenya, as a reminder that the people in that region were significantly involved in the process of and the struggle for freedom of this country. That in itself is meant to appeal to the hearts of the people of Mount Kenya, that the person who understands you and the person who feels you and the person who has an answer to that struggle, to the point of reward in terms of land and houses, is one Raila Odinga. If you ask me, then that is how I read the same, and it's meant to appeal to a certain category of voters. Not just voters, but also a certain category of regions of this country. Not that others did not get involved, but it's just to say that this then is the person who understands you, this is the person who feels you, this is the person who knows your history, and therefore this is the person who can fix it. So his handlers and his strategists must be doing a good job in terms of just ensuring that he has a strategy that then appeals to a certain category of people. But having said that, I guess if you look at whether he's a pacesetter or front runner or William Ruto, that's a discussion for another time. But in terms of having scored, this goes a long way.
Yes,
just making sure that then he puts himself at the appeal of certain people.
The emotions that are evoked when this whole topic of the Mau Mau and land, and of course, does he understand them and will he stand up for them? I think that actually does do a lot for his political pursuits. Sasha Omai is the chair lady of Young Women. What do you make of this front page story? Raila Odinga getting a blessing from the widow of a freedom fighter, Dedan Kimathi.
Oh, thank you so much for having me this morning. I think this is a great honor to our region, Mount Kenya region. I come from Mount Kenya region, and we understand that this is a very key person because they are freedom fighters and people who have been neglected by previous regimes. So by accepting the Mount Kenya region, it is by accepting the deeds of the historical deeds and what happened earlier was as we as we seek for our independence.
Yes.
So I think one of the major one of the signs that we see is that he's able to embrace us. He's able to embrace the mountain as a whole, embrace our history, and be able to recognize our our freedom fighters. And by doing that, it really touches on our whole, our being. It really touches on our emotions. Mostly, I can say it's appealing to the emotions of the Mount Kenya region people,
right?
Because that is where it pains most, and that is where what we hold dear.
Yes.
The freedom fighters are quite important to the Mount Kenya region. So it's a good sign. It's a great sign for a democratic leader, for somebody who wants to take over the leadership of this country. And that is really soul comforting and softening. It softens the soul of Mount Kenya region people.
Right, yeah, and she is a symbolic leader, and who better to, go for blessing to actually cement that message that I am with you, I understand your issues, and if you give me the seat, then I shall fight for you. Now, as you fought for Kenya. Now, let's move on to the Deputy President. While Raila ventures into a key part of the electorate that is central, the Deputy President is also venturing into another key part of the electorate, one that is typically an ODM stronghold, and that is the coastal region. Now, before we get into what he has done or his campaigns at the coast, I'd like us to focus on this question, this interesting question that's being posed by the Standard newspaper this morning. Front runner or 2022 pacesetter? I'll pose that one over to you, Prof.
Thank you. I think that question depends on whom you ask.
Okay.
If you ask the DP supporters tricks, they'll tell you that he's way ahead.
Yes.
Of Raila, whom, as far as they're concerned, has not even declared his candidature. If you ask that to ODM supporters, they'll tell you that, in fact, the Deputy President is a footnote in Raila's run. And I think this is very interesting in Kenya's politics, particularly, because Kenyan politics, even before fake news arrived,
yes,
was always pushed with hype. Trix, is interesting how the Deputy President appears in one function, and depending on the size of the crowd, people say he's already won the elections.
Right.
And then, Raila would appear in the next function, and they say, but you see, Raila's won. But the point is that we need, and this is advice to both parties, we need a bit of science in our campaigns, so that we don't whip up emotions unnecessarily, and so that we also have a good idea of where we are in elections. They don't do that. In fact, it's just occasional opinion polling.
Yes.
Yes, but having said that, of course, I mean, the Deputy President is putting a very strong campaign. Strategically, I mean, his two vote baskets are relatively intact. I mean, he's done very well in central Kenya. Of course, now he's down at the coast, and I may actually agree. And again, this would be just a bit of advice to ODM supporters that the Deputy President is putting a very strong campaign.
Right.
And if they're not careful, may actually get portions of these areas that are considered to be their strongholds. The coast is very interesting because Raila's followers have actually, they're looking at another vehicle, and they're positioning themselves to negotiate. Kingi, really, who delivered the biggest ODM results in Kenya, actually, better than Siaya. Kilifi had everybody from the governor to the senator to the MCAs. There were only 2 MCAs who are not ODM.
Yes.
It is interesting that, of course, I mean, he's already established a new alliance, the Power Alliance, and they're looking at negotiating. And the way negotiation happens is that you negotiate with both parties.
Absolutely.
Yes. So ODM should not assume that coast is a shoo-in. And that is intact.
Absolutely.
And of course UDA can actually make significant gains if the campaign strategy is solid.
Okay. Now, Mr. Manyasi, I'd like you to come in on this because the Deputy President did indeed start early, and this, one would assume, would give him an advantage. So what could possibly turn him into a pacesetter? Do you think there are strategies that the other opponents could be putting in that could actually knock him out of his, of course, position of being the one that is ahead in terms of campaigning?
Yes, Trix, and that can happen in many ways.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why the Deputy President was a front runner was, number one, because he declared his candidature way early, and number two, he also is the Deputy President. So by extension, having said that, then he automatically becomes a front runner because he had access to state resources, he's aggressive. He already had indicated very early that he's running, and he was indeed in the race. So all those things made him a front runner. However, in politics, the disadvantage to that is that he made his cards known quite early. He has won the many hearts, especially at the grassroots level. But the disadvantage to that is that things can quickly turn around, especially if two things don't happen.
Okay.
Number one, if he doesn't keep the momentum, if he gets his supporters fatigued, for example. Depends. For instance, at this point in time, unless all factors remain constant, for instance, if the threat of the MPs who have been working around with him to walk out in mass and join him in April happens, then he will remain solidly ahead. If, for example, he still has resources to run to the end, then he will remain solidly ahead. I say that because most of the people that, especially the running MPs, those who are around him, in the unlikely event that, for example, he didn't have the resources to support them, there's a very high possibility that then some of them will fall away. Now, on the flip side of it, it also depends on what the opponents then say and come up with. Because his strategy is already known, his opponents then, if they come up with a more appealing, I'm saying more appealing because the hustler narrative has been very appealing, especially to the electorate who are at the lower levels. So if someone else was to come up with a narrative, remember the election is almost a year, actually more than slightly less than a year ahead, which is a long time. And if someone else was to come up with something and a strategy that is more appealing, then that person then would easily take away parts of the gains of the Deputy President.
Right.
So really, in terms of being pacesetter or front runner, will largely depend on whether he maintains what he's doing today, or someone else then comes up with a better strategy than what he has today.
Right. Ms. Wamai, how do you see this panning out for the Deputy President? He has an early lead. Do you think he will maintain it? Because that early lead even cost him his relationship with the President, because it caused a lot of friction, but he maintained it because he had his eye on the campaigns already. So do you think this will be maintained as we go towards 2022, or with the other people being introduced into the race pose quite a significant problem for him? Ms. Wamai, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. So, yes, one thing I would say, I think the Deputy President is more of a pacesetter because he started his campaign 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when we were at the center of, trying to, when the President was really trying to achieve his development goals. And at this point, and especially at this point, no other candidate had showed interest and or had publicly declared that they want to become president in this country. So he has enjoyed monopoly for the past 3 years. But we can see within 3 weeks of Honorable Raila Odinga getting into the ground, and he has not even really declared he's going to be in the 2022 ballots. But we can already see the turnaround of events because people now have an option. What we have as Kenyans is that our politics sort of are exciting and people move with emotions and excitement. And the only person who had offered that was the deputy president. But what is happening right now, people have choices. People are now thinking through issues clearly, because there was a perception that with the issue of yake kumi na yangu kumi, people thought automatically the deputy president is going to inherit this the president's position. But as it turns out, with the rising of other candidates and other interests, his popularity is going down, because in a recent study in Mount Kenya, he had penetrated up to 90%. But right now we are struggling at a 50-something%, because within like 3 weeks, because there has been a lot of conversations, other candidates have come out and they are seeking for the same position. So I think his politics started really early, which in my view, he should have concentrated on the development. So for me, he was a pace setter, and now he can only lose whatever he had gained. And the people now, whatever is going to happen now is that it will be a contest of ideas and who pushes more. And there's Kenyans, we sort of bend towards the exciting and the new things. So the more the new candidates come in, the more they continue to tear down the numbers, the more they continue to prove that surely he's a pace setter. Okay. And we have seen that in Mount Kenya region. We have seen that in when the Right Honorable Raila Odinga went to Eldoret town. That is his backyard. Yeah, so you can feel and you can see that people are now, they are now bored. They want some new excitement. They are seeing new options, and that is really making him a pace setter. Okay. But also, really making him a pace setter, and he has to really keep up.
Okay. Now, the Daily Nation this morning is leading with politics as well. Uhuru Raila plot NAC-like coalition, and faced with the formidable challenge of the Deputy President, the UDA, Deputy President's UDA strategies for the Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga have drawn inspiration from the victorious pre-election pact of 2002 and crafted 3 options for nomination to secure majority seats at all levels. I'm wondering if the atmosphere is the same as the one that was there during the NAC time, and of course, and would this translate to a win, because it did back then. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we shall interrogate that dynamic.